Good morning, everybody. Welcome again to another edition of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. Friends, we always talk, and I always emphasize, you have to be on mega trends. And one of the biggest mega trends out there is healthcare, home healthcare. We all know it's getting bigger and bigger. And frankly, the last 6 months of COVID, it's already, in my mind, just emphasized a trend that was already in place. The sooner we can get people at home, the sooner we can treat people with automation, the better off they're going to be. But not only was I going to tell you that you need to be on the right trend, you also need to be with the right partner, the right leadership, and that's real world leadership, not necessarily Ivy League or Ivy Tower leadership. And with us today, we have Graham Russell of HSC Group. And Graham is exactly that person, and HSC is exactly in that home healthcare mega trend. Anyway, enough with me. Graham, with that introduction, welcome to 18 Minutes with 180 Markets.
Thanks very much, Greg, and thanks very much to 180 Markets for letting me share our story. Appreciate the opportunity. A bit about my background, Greg, is I grew up on the tools. I'm actually an electronics technician. I've been in the industry for 20 years, working particularly in hospitals with nurse call, aged care. We were a system integration company that did a lot of work nationally. It was a recurring revenue business and was fortunate to sell it to a private equity firm a number of years ago. We had been developing a lot of stuff in R&D though in that company, and particularly around Internet of Things and machine to machine. And the journey started, I suppose, is that I was very, I was very concerned that when I worked in aged care facilities, is that as good as the environment as it is that I didn't want to work all my life to end up in a 2x2 room. And so my vision was a way that we could develop some assistive technology to partner with aged care providers to, I suppose you say with the mega trends, there's a number of key problems that we're facing. And, COVID aside is that there's a huge amount of funding, and we're in the middle of a Royal Commission that is highlighting is that there's some significant challenges in the sector. And like with most challenges, we always tend to lead to look towards technology, and this is how I feel we can assist.
Absolutely. And I suppose, just to back up for a second, would you say, to me, like one of the mega trends is that obviously, A, people are living longer, but B, I would also say to the degree that people can live at home, they'd prefer that. And it's also, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm sure that you probably have also better life expectancies and better just life quality. Can you just talk a little bit about the home healthcare ecosystem that you've seen over the last 5 years or 10 years, I suppose?
Yes. Well, it's definitely a huge trend is that everyone wants to age in place and stay in their own home as long as possible. Like the market is that the statistics are like 93% of people want to stay at home. Secondly, the government wants you to stay at home. It's significantly cheaper. So to give you an example, is the government's currently spending around $4 billion a year funding nearly 1 million people to be cared for in their own home. Where if you look at in the nursing home or the residential aged care, they are spending $18 billion looking after 300,000 customers. So it is hugely significant difference. And that was our mission and vision. What's actually come out of that though is that we now do work across all the sectors. So we are working a lot in the NDIS sector. A lot of our assistive technology helps. So NDIS is the...
I was just going to ask you, to be honest, most of our viewers would not know what that is.
Too many acronyms, sorry, too technical. So the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So the NDIS is funded by about $22 billion a year. So we use our assistive technology in the NDIS sector. Huge portion of ours is in the home care sector. We do work a lot in the retirement village sector, and we also have brought a lot of our technology now into the nursing home and the residential aged care facilities. And the thing is that we're just highlighting is that people want to stay at home, but to allow us to stay at home, we need to provide really two things, is that our loved ones know that we're safe.
Right.
For example, if you and I are brothers, Greg, we would like our mum to be at home for as long as she possibly can, but we need to feel the comfort. Same thing as the providers need to feel comfort. And so what our technology does is allows a situation of creating privacy, but transparency.
Can you just go drill a little bit more into how that works? Maybe even use an example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Specific to your company, to HSC, not to industry.
Yep. No, so HSC, what we developed was an IoT cloud ecosystem, which we call Cloud. It's just a Greek word for automation. Basically, in this cloud is that we have 4 quadrants of this system. Number one is that we have a messaging engine. So we have sensor data that comes into our cloud, and then we send alerts to family members, care teams, 24-hour response centers. And so an example will be that, so if someone presses a button and needs help, we'll push that through to call an ambulance.
Like a panic button almost?
Panic button. So you always need an emergency call system. So but what our system is more around, not just emergency calls, is that we always need a situation, if mum needed help, she can get help.
Right.
Now we have some very cool tech around that. So we have a pendant that looks like a piece of jewelry, so it doesn't stigmatize.
Right.
Some nice watch devices. So it's discreet, but it gives a level of protection. We have voice activation devices, so you can actually call out. So if you're not wearing something, you just say nurse call or emergency call, and it will call for help. Like
Hey Siri, but something of that nature.
Absolutely, just an encrypted, certified version of that. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but the bigger part though is that what the thing with an emergency response system is that the problem with that is that you've already fallen over or you've already hurt yourself.
Right.
The situation is that you're putting the burglar alarm system after you've been robbed.
Yeah.
Closing the gate after the horse is closed.
Right.
So what we do is that we use discrete sensors, so usually heat mapping sensors that are just placed in wirelessly, and these then monitor things like what we call activities of daily living.
Right.
This is where we work a lot with our providers, aged care providers. So we have some very large clients like Bolton Clark, IRT, Ferris, for example, ACH.
Right.
Providers work to a funding mechanism of how you get assessed. So if we said that mum's at home now and she would like to get some more support, we would get an ACAT assessment. Now, these acronyms are an Aged Care Assessment Tribunal, and they will come in and check to see how mum is at home by herself. Can she continue to look after herself?
Right.
And the thing is that this usually comes down to 4 things, Greg. So first one's mobility. How does mum move around? Does she need a wheelchair? Does she use a walker? Does she use a cane? Or is she fairly active? Number 2, can she transfer? Can she get out of a seat? Can she get out?
Okay.
Can she get out off a toilet, for example? 3rd is hygiene, her bathing, toileting, so forth. 4th one is meal preparation. So these are the key parts nearly of Maslow's law of independence and autonomy. Can you look after yourself? So our sets actually collect that information autonomously and present it to family members and to care teams. So this creates a level of is that we feel comfortable that she's okay in that environment. The cool thing that we've developed is that we've got a little gateway box. It's 4G, Ethernet, 40-hour backup battery, power supply, plug and play. And this is the beautiful thing of IoT. Plug it in, couple of wireless sensors around the house, done. We then present it on an app to the family, and we do little things like proof of life. So the first thing I do up in the morning is I go to the toilet. So same as my mum would get up and go to the toilet.
Right.
I get a text message to say mum's up and active and she's okay.
That's great.
For an aged care provider that might be looking after 4,000 clients, they often can do this in a very manual way of actually doing calls or welfare checks. We now do the opposite. We'll do an exception report. So basically is that we'll send an alert of 3 people that haven't woken up this morning.
Right. And I'd imagine, just thinking about it, I alluded to earlier about the emergency situations, but what's much more probably common is that somebody is stuck on the toilet, without being crude, then
Yes.
they're in a in a mission critical situation.
Correct. And that's what we're trying to do with the ADLs, is that we can actually then start to, with our analytics and our AI platform, is that these systems are in, we usually do a 28-day base level,
Right.
and then we look for anomalies and changes and then communicate those to family and to carers. And this can be a situation where 2 things that happens is that this can allow a care team to move a client from a CHSP, which is a base level funding by government,
Right.
level 2 care package. So an example would be, is a real life example is a client. We noticed is that this client wasn't showering or bathing.
Right. Exactly.
So they went from green to an amber alert. Care team asked the client, so, we noticed you're not showering, is everything okay?
Right.
And, like possibly like others might be a little bit embarrassed about that situation, but it was basically, well, it's winter.
Can't be bothered.
I've got no visitors. I'm just doing my crosswords. But the real reason is that my arthritis is killing me.
Right.
And changing and having a shower and then changing again is very painful. So we've got catalyst parts here of going is that that's a falls risk with the arthritis. And secondly is that can we do further assistance? Because the reality of is what we've currently got is nothing. This falls over, breaks their hip, goes to hospital for 6, 8 to 10 weeks, then goes into high care.
Right. And I'm sure that happens all the time.
All the time.
And again, I can't help but think that situation, although not necessarily life-threatening, is highly, your quality of life has just gone down to, gone terrible.
Yes.
And that probably happens, 50 times more often than a person is having a heart attack per se.
Yep. Yeah.
And needs an ambulance like in the next 4 minutes, or it's going to be lethal.
Absolutely.
So, that's fantastic.
Well, I can show you a little bit more than around the ecosystem, because this is where we just start. We're just starting with the ecosystem. So we do, number 1 is emergency response.
Right.
Number 2 is activities of daily living. Number 3 is that we do vital signs monitoring, so people with chronic health. So we have devices that allows you to do your blood pressure, ECG, temperature, COPD.
Right.
It comes in and we monitor those sensor information. We also then have safety around smoke detection, water leak, gas leak, security, automation to bring that smart home sensor stuff in.
Right.
And the 5th one is we also do real-time location systems around care time, how long nurses have been on site, all that sort of stuff. All comes in the ecosystem, all presented, and all, we then create alerts and information around that. So it provides a dashboard for a CEO to look at all of his customers.
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible. And then, bringing it, I suppose, from the operational side to the financial side. And what I like, again, about your background is that, you didn't start, it sounds like, with very much, so you had to make sure that you made a living off of it.
Yes.
And can you just tell us a little bit about the financial metrics, if you will, from a high level?
Yes. So we sell the hardware piece at the top.
Right.
We actually work with some certain tech from certain parts of all around the world. Some pieces we do ourselves and some parts we bring in. We sell that hardware and we make a margin, an industry margin on that sort of stuff, for you around that 30% margin on the hardware. We then, on the ecosystem, we then charge a license fee for each device that comes into that. And then, and so there are smaller amounts, but over a long piece that there's, so for example, we charge a weekly fee for the emergency response, a weekly fee for the analytics of the data, and then for the vital signs, and then each piece of it. So to give you an example of where we're at today, since January, since we started with the new management in the HSC group, we've done about 2 million in sales.
Amazing.
To our June, to till June. We've got coming up to about 4,500 subscribers, systems installed, and that's giving us around about $250,000 annualized recurring revenue on that. And we have about, just in the Australian market, it's about a $1.2 billion market, addressable market. And so we've got about 0.4% of the market at the moment.
Which is not, to be honest, like that's nothing. I mean, even if you got 2 or 3% of the market, it would obviously be a game changer, so to speak.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of bits of the tailwind there for you, Greg, and just to share with your audience is that, obviously the Royal Commission #1 in November comes out. One of the key parts of that Royal Commission is accountability and transparency. So for a provider to be able to do that, it's going to be more paperwork of showing what they're doing is what they say they're doing to prove the funding, or implement a system like ours that does it independently and autonomously.
Because you can just create reports.
Yep. So we just create reports where independently and autonomously of the whole lot of how long a nurse was in the room, what they did, how long it was there. We then have sleep patterns, meal patterns, and all that sort of stuff, you know, passively but proactively providing that support. And, you know, it's, we're getting there. So one of the pieces that we've had to build over the last bit, we've had to certify the product. So it's all Australian standard approved. We've done our ISO data security management because we are taking a lot of data there. It's all managed by AWS here in Australia and Sydney. But in that market, we already have partners in New Zealand and partners in Singapore. And the way that we're scaling this now is that one of our announcements, we just partnered with Harvey Norman Commercial in New South Wales as one of our distributors. But we have some significant partners in all of the states that are, and I suppose is that we will scale through that model.
Right. And I mean, obviously, you know, it's incredibly compelling. Can you just tell us about the customer acquisition process? How do you get customers?
Yep, that's a good question, Greg. So we decided that we didn't want to go direct to each consumer. So we're business to business to consumer model. So for example, is that, you know, with some of the very large providers like Bolton Clark, which is the RSL Care and RDNS, which is a Royal District Nursing Service. They have offices all up and down the East Coast. They look after about 60,000 clients currently that they manage in care. And they do home care, villages, and residential aged care. So we approached them with our technology and showed, #1 is that, you know, this will improve apartment sales and tenancy rate and provide a differentiation for your customers.
Sure, yeah, easily, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, when you and I are looking for a place for mum, is that, you know, every provider says that they're doing a great job. Royal Commission's not saying that at the moment, but they're all saying is that, you know, we do this or we do that. By showing some technology, saying is that we will got transparency and accountability of what we're doing. #2, though, is that we actually white label those products.
Okay.
So we label our software underneath the provider, so they have their own apps, branding on the products, all that sort of stuff from there. And then from there that they actually buy the product, usually in pallet loads. And because of the plug and play nature of the product, their care teams actually install it.
So it doesn't require an electrician per se to install?
No, it's all battery operated, lithium ion batteries, 3-year battery life.
Right, so basically if you can install a computer modem, you probably could do this as well, you're saying?
Correct. Very similar. It's just basically plug it into the PowerPoint. We stage it for all our customers in our factory. So we actually do all the pre-configuration for them and do a lot of that for them as well. Then for our reseller network, so we have a number of so we just, for example, probably one that comes to mind, the recent one was Harrison Technologies. Andrew been in the aged care space for probably 15 to 20 years. Has a number of large clients already in the aged care space. And then we bring our product to Andrew, and he then becomes the system, provider, integrator, does all the maintenance and so forth. So it gives us the opportunity to scale the business a lot easier, Greg.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me, because to go out to, I suppose, to attack each consumer, although you could be successful, the cost per acquisition could be a lot higher. And
Correct.
and I think that anybody that's attempted Google Words and things of that nature without really having a lot of skill in it, you can spend a lot of money very quickly.
That's right. Well, the thing is also is that all this is government funded. So by working with the aged care providers who have access to the funding, they would go to our mum and say, listen, we believe you need our assistive technology pack. This will allow you to stay at home better. It's going to connect more with your family. But more importantly, is that by having this system installed, is that the government's going to fund it out of your package. So there's no direct cost to you. For the provider, they've now got a tremendous data set to support you staying in the home. The other two bits, really other big piece of it is that we're aware of the other big change event, Greg, is that June 2024, the existing 3G network will be turned off.
Okay.
There's currently 270,000 medical emergency response systems registered that all have to be replaced. Every single one of them. It needs to go to 4G. What we've positioned ourselves with is that we have an emergency response system to replace that product, but that's only one little piece of what we do.
So you can upsell them effectively.
We've got all the activities of daily living and the AI and the algorithms, and we use this base hub to collect the vital signs, all of it. So a little bit like saying is that a bit like the NBN, I suppose, in a way. We're not going to put a phone line back in. We're putting the fibre optic in, and when you want to do a telephone call, it's there, but we can still then add all the other services as required.
Right, you can splice it down there. Graham, we have to conclude because we keep these things tight, but in short, is there any message that you would like the audience to have as a couple closing points, if you will?
I suppose the thing, Greg, is that, we're really just on a mission to, I don't think anyone here in your audience wants to move into a nursing home.
No.
And this is vitally important. And what we're doing is that, we're very driven around the mission of it. And we're excited about, we're all going to make $1 out of it. But at the same time, though, is that we're really going to help every one of us in the future to be able to stay at home as long as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the opportunity, Greg, to share it.
Thanks. Graham, please keep us up with your story. It's incredible. It's helping people out, and you can make a buck along the way. What's better than that? Yeah,
dead right. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, mate.